In 2026, cruise security has tightened so much that one wrong item in your luggage can disappear before you ever step on board. Sounds extreme? Then answer this. If there's something in your suitcase that cruise lines now flag as a risk, would you even know what it is? I thought I did, until a passenger told me her single bottle of wine was pulled from her checked bag and never returned. Then a couple shared that their luggage was accidentally sent to an entirely different ship and they spent 4 days wearing whatever they had in their carry-ons. These stories aren't rare anymore, and the scary part is that many of the items cruise lines are cracking down on are things almost every traveler packs without thinking. So here's the real question. Out of everything you're bringing on your next cruise, which item could get you held up, fined, or left without your luggage for days? You might be surprised. Here's where most cruisers slip up, even the seasoned ones. They assume the rules for checked bags on a cruise work the same way they do at the airport. That illusion usually breaks the moment security opens their suitcase. Take the passenger who messaged me last month. She packed a single bottle of wine, something she'd done on previous cruises without a second thought. This time, the bottle vanished. No warning, no explanation, no chance of getting it back. She only realized what happened when her luggage arrived with a note and an empty space where the bottle had been tucked between her sweaters. The problem isn't the wine itself, it's where she put it. Cruise lines in 2026 expect all alcohol to be in your carry-on, and they're stricter than ever about enforcing it. Anything flammable or pressurized, hairsprays, aerosols, certain liquids, gets the same treatment. And the part that stings the most is the confusion. Because these items are allowed on ships, just not the way passengers assume. This is where the panic starts. If a harmless-looking item like wine can trigger a confiscation, what else in your suitcase is about to earn the same fate? And more importantly, how do you know which part of your packing routine needs to change before your next sailing? We'll get to that. But first, there's an item even more common than wine that security pulls out every single day, and odds are you have one charging right next to you right now. The item cruise security takes more than anything else right now isn't alcohol, it's power banks. And most people lose them without realizing they broke a rule. A simple pattern repeats every sailing. A passenger opens their luggage and finds a note where their power bank used to be. No damage, no mess, just a missing battery. Why? Because in 2026, cruise lines treat lithium batteries like potential fire hazards. If the power bank is in checked luggage, or the capacity isn't clearly labeled, or it exceeds the limit, it's gone. And unlike wine, they almost never return it at the end of the cruise. I've watched people get blindsided by this, not because they did something reckless, but because they assumed the rules were the same as flying. They aren't. The irony is that security isn't hunting for rare gadgets, they're taking the exact battery you use every single day. Which means, if you rely on yours for port days, you can't afford to guess which version of the rule your ship follows. And if you think that surprise is bad, wait until you see what can happen to your entire suitcase. Imagine boarding your cruise, heading to your cabin, and nothing. No suitcase at the door, not in the hallway, not anywhere. That happened to a couple I met after a Holland America sailing. Their luggage wasn't late, it was loaded onto an entirely different ship. They didn't see a single piece of clothing for 4 days. 4. The worst part? There was nothing they could do except wait for both ships to reach the same port. What caused it? A torn luggage tag. That tiny detail turned into half a cruise spent wearing whatever they carried in their day bag. So here's the real lesson. If your tags aren't protected, you're gambling with your entire wardrobe. A plastic luggage tag holder costs a few dollars. Losing your suitcase for half a cruise costs your sanity. And this brings up an even bigger question. If your luggage can disappear for days, how do you make sure you're not stuck with absolutely nothing? But a misrouted suitcase isn't the only reason people end up wearing the same outfit for 24 hours. Sometimes the real problem isn't the bag that didn't arrive, it's the way we packed the one that did. There's a moment every cruiser dreads. Opening the cabin door, checking the hallway, and realizing the only clothing you have is whatever you wore on the plane. That moment happens more often than people admit, and it's usually because travelers pack as if every suitcase is guaranteed to show up on time. A woman I spoke to had her luggage delayed for just 1 night, not 4 days, like the couple earlier, and even that single night was enough to send her into panic mode. No spare outfit, no swimsuit, not even fresh socks. Just the clothes she'd been wearing since the airport. She told me she spent the entire evening feeling like she wasn't on vacation yet, just waiting for her life to restart. The truth is simple. If all your clothes live in one bag, you're trusting the system more than the system deserves. Experienced cruisers split their essentials, a change of clothes in the carry-on, A few items swapped with their travel partner, small moves that turn a luggage delay into a mild annoyance instead of a full disaster. But here's the uncomfortable question. What exactly goes into that carry-on to guarantee you won't spend your first day on board feeling stranded? That's where the next mistake catches almost everyone. A lot of cruisers pack for sunshine and pools, then spend their first night on board realizing they can't walk into half the places they plan to visit. That's the moment the dress code stops being a suggestion and becomes a wall between you and your vacation. I once watched a couple turned away at the dining room entrance. They weren't being dramatic, they were genuinely confused. Shorts were fine at lunch, so why not dinner? The embarrassment on their faces said everything. They ended up eating at the buffet that night, not because they wanted to, but because they didn't bring anything else. And that's not the only surprise. Some excursions require closed-toe shoes, something many people don't discover until they're already standing in line. Others try to join a theme night without realizing the ship actually takes these nights seriously. Scarlet Night on Virgin, Orange Night on Holland America, white parties on multiple lines. When you're the only person not dressed for the moment, the fun hits differently. Even the weather betrays people. Warm destinations still have cold decks at night, and more than a few cruisers end up buying a hoodie on board for twice the price simply because they assume the Caribbean never got chilly. Outfits don't just shape the mood of your cruise, they control which moments you actually get to take part in. And if wardrobe surprises can ruin a night, wait until you see the mistake that ruins an entire day before it even starts. For a mistake that sounds harmless, this one derails more cruises than bad weather. People assume they'll remember the basics, right up until they open their suitcase on day one and realize the one thing they needed most never made it on board. I met a man who packed 3 dress shirts, polished shoes, cufflinks, and forgot his belt. He spent formal night walking around with his hands in his pockets trying to keep his pants from sliding. Another woman swore she brought her swimsuit, only to discover it was still drying at home on the shower rod. She didn't touch a pool until the second port day. These aren't dramatic emergencies, they're small, irritating problems that follow you everywhere. And once the ship sails, replacing anything becomes a challenge. The shops on board charge double, and the selection is never what you hope for. One forgotten item can shadow your entire trip simply because it nags at you every time you reach for it and come up empty. A packing list sounds boring until you realize it's the only thing standing between you and a week of avoidable frustration. But the next mistake isn't about frustration, it's about security taking something you thought you were allowed to bring. Hair tools are the silent traps of cruise packing. Everyone assumes they're allowed, right up until they aren't. The rule isn't about the brand or the model. It's about voltage, heat risk, and the ship's electrical system. And most passengers don't discover that until their favorite tool disappears. Anna learned this the hard way. She boarded a Disney cruise with the same hair dryer she'd used for years. No warnings, no issues, nothing unusual. But when her luggage arrived, the dryer was missing. At the end of the cruise, she went to the collection table and froze. It was covered with confiscated devices, rows of hair dryers, curlers, and a surprising number of Dyson Airwraps. The shock wasn't that her tool had been taken. It was realizing she wasn't alone. Dozens of other passengers had made the exact same assumption. If it works at home, it must work on the ship. Except ships operate under stricter electrical rules, and anything with the wrong voltage or heat profile gets pulled instantly. Losing a hair tool doesn't ruin a cruise, but it does set the tone for the rest of the week. You start your vacation realizing you made a mistake you didn't even know existed. And that theme continues, because the next category of items doesn't just get confiscated. Some of them can get you flagged by safety officers within minutes. There's a moment on every sailing when someone realizes they left a prescription at home. It always starts the same way. A quiet panic, a rush trip to the medical center, and then the sinking realization that the staff can't refill a U.S. prescription once the ship leaves American waters. I met a woman going through this exact spiral. She'd packed perfectly, outfits, chargers, sunscreen, but her medication never made it into her bag. She thought the medical center would have a backup. They didn't. And the closest equivalent available in port wouldn't have been safe for her condition. She spent 2 days debating whether she needed to fly home from the next stop. It's a harsh reminder of how unforgiving the ocean can be. On land, forgetting something is a minor inconvenience. At sea, the simplest oversight becomes a crisis because you can't walk to a drugstore or call your doctor for a quick fix. Even basic over-the-counter meds become a problem. A small bout of seasickness or stomach trouble turns into a surprisingly expensive purchase on board, and many passengers only realize this after they're already miserable. Medication isn't just another item on your list, it's the one thing you can't improvise once the ship sails. And if forgetting pills can turn into a medical headache, The next mistake can cause a different kind of chaos, losing access to the documents you need most. Every cruise terminal has the same moment. Someone reaches the front of the line, opens their phone to pull up their boarding pass, and the screen refuses to load. The Wi-Fi is overloaded, cell service is crawling, and the app that worked perfectly at home suddenly freezes like it's never met you before. I watched a family stuck in that exact nightmare. Their luggage was already taken, the line was moving, and all they could do was stand there tapping their phones, hoping one bar of signal would magically appear. It didn't. A simple line of code in an app turned into 20 minutes of embarrassment and stress they absolutely didn't need. Printed documents aren't glamorous, but they don't crash, they don't glitch, and they don't depend on 1,000 other passengers staying off the network. One sheet of paper can save you from looking helpless in front of a crowd while the terminal staff tries to solve a problem your phone created. It's a small oversight with big consequences, and it's not the only thing people forget to back up. Because the next mistake isn't about paperwork, it's about the tiny emergencies that can ruin a day if you don't prepare for them. Some cruise mistakes don't explode on day one, they creep up on you in the most inconvenient moments. A loose screw on your glasses during sail away, a sudden chip in a tooth right before dinner, a soaking wet swimsuit with nowhere safe to store it. Tiny problems, yes, but the kind that make you wish you had packed just one more thing. I met a man who lost the only pair of glasses he brought. One wave hit the side of the tender boat, and they were gone. He spent the next 2 days squinting at menus and missing half the details of the ports he'd looked forward to for months. Another passenger I spoke to cracked a tooth on a piece of ice during a sea day and spent the rest of the cruise eating gingerly, wishing she had brought a simple temporary repair kit. None of these items seem essential until the second you need them, and by then, the ship is already far from anywhere that can help. A tiny repair tool, a spare pair of glasses, a waterproof zip bag. They don't feel like packing priorities, but they quietly keep your vacation moving. And if small emergencies can throw off an entire day, wait until you see the mistake that gets even seasoned cruisers flagged by security within minutes, all because they brought the wrong kind of gadget. Nothing draws a crowd at the security table faster than a device a passenger swears is totally fine to bring. Drones, walkie-talkies, multi-plug adapters, they all seem harmless until a security officer pulls them from your bag and asks you to step aside. I once watched a guest try to explain why his walkie-talkies were safe. He'd used them for years on road trips, camping, even theme parks. But ships run on tightly controlled frequencies, and the moment his device powered on during inspection, it interfered with the ship's internal channels. What he thought was convenience instantly became a safety issue. Drones create the same problem in a different way. Some cruise lines allow them, but only under strict conditions. They're checked in, logged, and only released in certain ports. Yet people still pack them expecting to fly from their balcony on embarkation day, which is exactly how they end up having a long conversation with security instead. Even chargers trip people up. A multi-outlet adapter that works in every hotel suddenly becomes contraband if it has hidden surge protection. The passenger doesn't see the risk, but the ship does, and the device gets confiscated before you can argue. None of these gadgets are banned because they're unusual. They're banned because, at sea, one signal or one spark can cause problems you never see coming. Packing for a cruise isn't really about what fits in your suitcase. It's about what happens when something goes wrong. One missing document, one banned gadget, one bag that doesn't show up on time. Those tiny moments decide whether your vacation feels effortless or stressful before the ship even leaves the port. Every mistake in this video comes from real passengers who thought, "It won't happen to me." And maybe you felt the same way. But once you've seen how fast a small oversight can snowball at sea, you start to understand why experienced cruisers pack the way they do. Simple, intentional, prepared. Now, I want to hear your story. Did you ever have something confiscated? Did you forget something so obvious it still haunts you? Or did you learn a packing trick the hard way? Drop it in the comments. Your lesson might save someone else's cruise. If you found this helpful, tap like and hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because in the next video, we're breaking down the cruise ship fees that catch even smart travelers off guard and how to dodge every single one of them before they touch your account. You're about to cruise smarter than ever. I'll see you there.